I died in a car accident on my 29th birthday, driving home from another failed job interview, wearing a dress I'd bought from a thrift store because my ex-husband had cleaned out our joint account before the divorce. The last thing I thought before the truck hit me was, at least I don't have to face another day of this. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and for 7 years I was Sarah Chun, devoted wife, perfect hostess, dutiful daughter-in-law. I gave up my dreams of becoming an architect to support my husband James's real estate career. I worked 3 part-time jobs to pay his business school loans. I smiled through family dinners where his mother criticized everything I did. And when James finally made partner at his firm, when we could finally afford the life we'd struggled for, he divorced me for his colleague Victoria, a woman with family money, the right connections, and none of my small-town mentality. The divorce left me with nothing. James's lawyer had been better than mine. I'd signed a prenup when I was young and stupid and in love. I walked away with my clothes, my student debt, and a breaking heart. I spent the next year trying to rebuild. But without my degree, I dropped out to work, and without connections, doors kept slamming in my face. James's new wife made sure everyone in our industry knew I was difficult and unreliable. I died broke, alone, and convinced I'd wasted the best years of my life on a man who discarded me like trash. Then I opened my eyes. I was sitting in James's expensive car, wearing my wedding dress, crying. Through the windshield, I could see the chapel where we'd just gotten married. My hands were 22 again, smooth and ring-free except for the new gold band James had just slid on my finger. This was our wedding day. 7 years before the divorce. 7 years before I'd lose everything. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Rachel. "You okay? You ran out so fast." I stared at the message, memories flooding back. I remembered this moment. During the reception, James's mother had cornered me in the bathroom and told me I wasn't good enough for her son, that I should have refused his proposal, that girls like me, poor, uneducated, desperate, always drag down men with potential. In my original life, I'd hidden my tears, fixed my makeup, and gone back to the party. I'd spent the next 7 years trying to prove her wrong. This time I started the car and drove away. I drove straight to the hotel where we were supposed to spend our wedding night. I packed my overnight bag, the lingerie I'd bought with my last paycheck, the honeymoon clothes I'd saved for months to afford, and I kept driving. My phone rang. James. I declined the call. It rang again. His mother. Declined. Again and again until I finally turned it off. I drove to Rachel's apartment and knocked on her door at midnight, still wearing my wedding dress. "Sarah." Rachel stared at me in shock. "What happened? Where's James?" "I left him," I said. "You left him? But you just got married 6 hours ago." "I know." I walked past her into the apartment. "Can I stay here tonight?" "Of course, but Sarah, what happened?" I looked at my best friend, the woman who in my previous life had slowly drifted away because James hadn't approved of her negative influence. Rachel was bold, ambitious, and refused to shrink herself for anyone. Everything James hated. I realized I was making the biggest mistake of my life, I said. And I had to leave before it was too late. Rachel stared at me for a long moment. "Okay, let me get you some comfortable clothes." That night I lay in Rachel's guest room and planned my new life. I knew exactly what would happen if I stayed with James. I knew how it would end. This time I was writing a different story. The next morning, I went to the bank and withdrew half the money from our joint account, my savings from the last 2 years. It wasn't much, maybe $5,000, but it was mine. Then I went to the university admissions office. "I need to re-enroll," I told the counselor. "I dropped out 2 years ago, but I want to finish my architecture degree." The counselor looked surprised. "Don't you just get married yesterday?" I saw the photos on social media. Small town. Everyone knew everything. "I made a mistake," I said simply. "I'm fixing it." "Well," she pulled up my file. "You were a good student before you left. You can re-enroll for fall semester, but you'll need to pay the deposit by Friday. I'll have it by Thursday." James found me that afternoon at Rachel's apartment. "Sarah, what the hell?" He burst through the door before Rachel could stop him. "You left our wedding? Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? My mother is devastated. My colleagues think I did something wrong. You made me look like an idiot." I looked at him, handsome, polished, furious, and felt nothing. Did you even notice I was upset? I asked calmly. What? At the wedding. Did you notice I'd been crying? James faltered. You were emotional. It was a big day. Your mother told me I wasn't good enough for you, that I should have refused your proposal, that I was going to drag you down. My mother was just worried. And you did nothing. You said nothing. You let her treat me like garbage at my own wedding. Sarah, my mother is traditional. She just wants the best for me. And I'm not it. She made that very clear. James's expression shifted. Look, I'll talk to her. She'll apologize. Just come home. We can fix this. I don't want to fix it. He stared at me. What? I don't want to be married to you, James. I want an annulment. An annulment? Sarah, we're married. You can't just. We never consummated the marriage. I left on our wedding night. That's grounds for annulment. Rachel was watching from the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide. James's face turned red. You're being ridiculous. You're upset because of one comment from my mother. I'm upset because I just realized I was about to spend my life with a man who doesn't defend me, doesn't respect me, and doesn't actually see me as an equal partner. That's not fair. Isn't it? Tell me, James, what was I planning to study before I dropped out to work 3 jobs while you went to business school? Silence. You don't know, do you? You worked retail. I was studying architecture. I wanted to design sustainable housing for low-income communities. I had a portfolio. I had dreams. But you never asked about them because they weren't as important as your career. James looked uncomfortable. I didn't ask you to drop out. That was your choice. You're right. It was. And now I'm choosing differently. I pulled off my wedding ring and held it out. I want an annulment. If you fight me on this, I'll file for divorce and I'll tell everyone exactly why I left. You wouldn't. Try me. James took the ring, his hand shaking. You're making a huge mistake. You'll regret this. Maybe. But it'll be my mistake to make. After he left, Rachel sat down beside me on the couch. Holy shit, she breathed. Yeah. You really just blew up your entire life. Yeah. I'm proud of you. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years, in either life. Thanks. So what now? Now I finish my degree. I build a career. I figure out who Sarah Mitchell is supposed to be. And if you're lonely, then I'll be lonely. But I'll be lonely on my own terms. The annulment went through quickly. James's family wanted the scandal contained, and agreeing to my terms was easier than having me drag their name through a public divorce. Mrs. Chun tried to call me once. I blocked her number. James's colleagues whispered, but I didn't care. I wasn't trying to impress them anymore. I moved into a tiny studio apartment and enrolled full-time at the university. My savings lasted 4 months. I got a part-time job at a coffee shop near campus. Rachel helped when I needed it, but I was determined to make it on my own. For the first time in either of my lives, I was free. School was harder than I remembered. I'd forgotten how much work went into a good design, how many late nights and revisions and critiques. But I loved it. Every line I drew, every model I built, every concept I developed, it was mine. My professor, Dr. Elena Santos, noticed my dedication. You're older than most of my students, she observed one day after class. I dropped out a few years ago. I'm catching up. You're not just catching up. You're excelling. She handed me a flyer. There's a design competition for sustainable housing. First prize is a scholarship and an internship with Jensen and Associates. You should enter. Jensen and Associates. One of the top architecture firms in the state. In my previous life, I'd only dreamed of working somewhere like that. I'm not good enough yet, I said. Let me be the judge of that. Enter the competition, Sarah. I worked on my competition entry for 3 months, balancing classes, work, and endless revisions. Rachel brought me food when I forgot to eat. Dr. Santos gave me feedback late into the night. My design was for modular, sustainable housing that could be quickly assembled in disaster zones or low-income areas. Each unit was small but functional, designed to give dignity and safety to people who had nothing. It was everything I'd wanted to create before I'd given up my dreams for James. The day of the competition presentation, I wore my best thrift store outfit and carried my portfolio like armor. 20 students presented. I went last. When I finished, the judges were quiet. "This is exceptional work," one of them finally said. "The attention to structural integrity while maintaining cost-effectiveness. This is exactly what we need in sustainable design." "Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. 2 weeks later, I got the call. I'd won first place. The scholarship paid my remaining tuition. The internship at Jensen & Associates started that summer. I was 23, broke, and happier than I'd ever been. Jensen & Associates was everything I dreamed of. Challenging projects, brilliant colleagues, work that mattered. My supervisor, Marcus Jensen, was demanding but fair. "You have raw talent," he told me during my first review. "But you need confidence. Stop apologizing for taking up space." "I'm not. You apologize every time you speak up in meetings. Every time you present an idea. Stop it. You earned your place here." He was right. Years of trying to be smaller, quieter, less threatening for James had trained me to shrink. I had to unlearn it. 6 months into my internship, Marcus assigned me to a major project. Affordable housing for a city development. It was high profile, important, and terrifying. "Why me?" I asked. "The senior associates have senior projects. I'm giving you this because you're ready. Don't prove me wrong." I didn't. I worked harder than I'd ever worked, pulling all-nighters, collaborating with engineers and contractors, presenting to city council members who looked at me like I was a child playing dress-up. But my designs spoke for themselves. The project was approved. Construction began. I saw my vision taking shape in steel and concrete and glass. "You did good work," Marcus said when the first building was completed. "The city's happy. The residents are happy. I'm promoting you to junior associate." I was 24 and had just leapfrogged over people with twice my experience. That night, Rachel took me out to celebrate. "I'm so proud of you," she said, raising her glass. "Look at you, building an actual career, living your actual life." "It's terrifying," I admitted. "Good. That means you're doing it right." "Sometimes I wonder." I trailed off. Wonder what? If I made the right choice, walking away from James, from that life, it would have been easier to just stay. Rachel gave me a serious look. "Sarah, I watched you in that marriage, well, almost marriage. You were dying inside. Slowly, quietly, but dying. Now you're alive. Don't second-guess that." She was right. In my previous life I died, literally died. Still wondering if I'd been enough, if I could have tried harder, if I deserved the love I'd never received. This time I was building something I deserved. 2 years after leaving James, I was invited to speak at a design conference about sustainable housing. It was my first major speaking engagement and I was terrified. "You'll be great," Rachel assured me. "Just remember, you're the expert now." The conference was in Chicago, in a massive convention center full of architects, developers, and industry leaders. I felt like an imposter in my new professional clothes, not thrift store anymore, but still not designer like everyone else seemed to be wearing. I was reviewing my presentation notes in the speaker lounge when someone sat down beside me. "Sarah Mitchell?" I looked up. The man was maybe 40, wearing an expensive suit, confident and polished. Something about him seemed familiar. "Yes. I'm Daniel Park. I'm on the board of Park Development. I saw your work on the Riverside Housing Project. Impressive." "Thank you. I'd like to talk to you about a project we're developing. Multiple buildings, focus on sustainability and community integration. Your approach is exactly what we need." We talked for an hour about design philosophy, community needs, environmental impact. Daniel was brilliant and passionate, and for the first time in either life, I felt seen as a professional, not as someone's wife or burden. "Give me your card," he said finally. "I'll have my team reach out." "I don't have cards yet," I admitted. "I'm still pretty junior." He smiled. "Not for long, I think." My presentation went well, not perfect but solid. Afterwards, several people approached me with questions and business cards. I felt like I was finally becoming someone. That evening, there was a reception for speakers and sponsors. I almost didn't go, networking events made me anxious, but Rachel had flown in to support me and insisted. "You need to meet people," she said. "Build connections." This is how careers happen. She was right. I was talking to a developer from Seattle when I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. Sarah? Sarah Mitchell. I turned slowly. James stood 3 feet away, staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. He looked older, tired. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there when we'd married. Beside him stood Victoria. His colleague, his affair partner, his wife. She was exactly as I remembered. Polished, beautiful, cold. James, I said calmly. Hello. What are you doing here? I'm a speaker. I presented on sustainable housing design. You're an architect? He looked genuinely shocked. Junior associate at Jensen and Associates. But you dropped out of school. You worked retail. I went back to school after our annulment. Finished my degree. Built a career. Victoria was studying me with undisguised curiosity. James said you were different. I'm sure he did. I smiled. If you'll excuse me. Wait. James grabbed my arm. Can we talk? Privately. I looked pointedly at his hand until he let go. I don't think that's appropriate. 5 minutes. Please. Victoria's expression tightened. James, we should. 5 minutes, he repeated. Against my better judgment, I followed him to a quiet corner of the reception hall. You look good, James said awkwardly. Thank you. I didn't know you'd gone back to school. Finished your degree. Why would you? We haven't spoken in 2 years. I tried calling. Once. You called once right after the annulment. I didn't answer. James ran his hand through his hair. A gesture I remembered from our marriage, when he was stressed or frustrated. I wanted to apologize. For how things ended. For what my mother said. Okay. Okay, you've apologized. Is that all? Sarah, I made a mistake. Letting you go. I see that now. I stared at him. You're married. Unhappily. That's not my problem. We rushed into it. After you left, everything was chaos. My mother was furious. Victoria was there, and she understood the business, the pressure. It made sense at the time. And now I realize what I gave up. You supported me through business school. You believed in me when no one else did. You were real, Sarah. Not like. He glanced back at Victoria, who was watching us with narrowed eyes. Not like your wife. She's not you. No, she's not. She's the woman you cheated with. The woman you left me for. The woman you chose. I was stupid. Yes, you were. But that's not my problem anymore. I started to walk away. Sarah, wait. I still love you. I turned back. No, you don't. You love the idea of me. The woman who worked 3 jobs while you built your career. The woman who made you feel important and needed. But you never loved the real me. You didn't even know who I was. That's not true. Tell me what I wanted to study before I dropped out. Silence. Tell me what my dream project was. What I wanted to build more than anything. More silence. You still don't know, do you? After all this time, you still haven't bothered to learn who I actually am. Sarah. I wanted to design affordable housing for communities that had been forgotten. I wanted to create spaces that gave people dignity and hope. I wanted to matter, not just support someone else while they mattered. I gestured around the conference hall. This is who I was supposed to be, James. And I almost gave it up to be your wife. So no, I don't want your apology. I don't want your regret. I just want you to leave me alone. I walked away, and this time he didn't follow. Rachel found me in the bathroom 10 minutes later, splashing cold water on my face. I saw James, she said. Are you okay? Yeah. I looked at my reflection, 25 years old, professionally dressed, confident. So different from the broken woman I'd been in my previous life. Yeah, I'm actually okay. What did he want? To tell me he made a mistake leaving me. And I told him I didn't care. I dried my face, reapplied my lipstick. I meant it, Ratch. I actually don't care. That's growth. That's freedom. We went back to the reception. Daniel Park found me immediately. There you are. I want you to meet some people. He introduced me to developers, investors, architects whose work I'd studied in school. By the end of the evening, I had a dozen new contacts and 3 potential project offers. James watched from across the room. Victoria clinging to his arm like she was afraid he'd float away. I didn't look at them again. 6 months later, Daniel Park offered me a position at his firm, not as an employee, but as a partner in a new division focused on sustainable community development. "You're young," he said, "but you're brilliant. I want to build something that matters, and I need someone who shares that vision." I'm 25. I've only been licensed for 8 months. And you've already designed a housing project that's changing lives. Age doesn't matter. Vision does. I accepted. Rachel threw me a party to celebrate. All my classmates, my colleagues from Jensen and Associates, Dr. Santos who believed in me from the start, everyone I'd built relationships with in this new life. "Speech," someone called out. I stood up, glass in hand, surrounded by people who saw me as an architect, a colleague, a friend, not as anyone's wife or ex-wife or failure. 3 years ago, I said, I made a decision that everyone told me was crazy. I walked away from security, from what was expected, from the easier path. And I was terrified. But I did it anyway, because I realized that a safe life I didn't want was worse than an uncertain life I did. I looked around the room. Thank you for being part of this uncertain, imperfect, absolutely perfect life. Thank you for seeing me, for challenging me, for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt a warmth I'd never experienced in my previous life. The warmth of being valued for who I actually was. That night, Daniel asked me to dinner. Not as a business meeting, but as a date. I'm not good at this, I admitted. Dating, I mean. My last relationship. It didn't end well. Mine either, Daniel said. I was engaged 2 years ago. She left me for someone with better connections. Apparently I was too focused on changing the world and not focused enough on making money. Sounds familiar. I'm not asking for a relationship, Daniel said. I'm just asking for dinner with someone I find interesting. No pressure. No expectations. Okay, I said. I can do dinner. We dated slowly, carefully. Daniel respected my boundaries, my need to maintain my independence, my wariness of losing myself again. I'm not trying to complete you, he told me once. You're already complete. I'm just enjoying your company. Good, I said, because I'm never being someone's half again. I'm a whole person on my own. I know. That's what I love about you. 2 years into our partnership, both professional and personal, our firm completed its first major project. A sustainable housing community that provided affordable, beautiful homes for families who'd never thought they'd escape poverty. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I watched families move into spaces I designed, and I felt something I'd never felt in my previous life. Pride. This is what you were meant to do, Daniel said, standing beside me. Yeah, I agreed. It is. That evening, there was a reception for investors and city officials. I was talking to the mayor when James appeared. Sarah. I turned surprised. James? What are you doing here? I'm developing a property nearby. I saw the project announcement. He looked around at the community I'd built. This is incredible. You did this. My firm did it. I was lead architect. It's amazing. Really. He paused. Can I talk to you for a minute? I excused myself from the mayor and followed James to a quieter area. I'm getting divorced, he said without preamble. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? I wouldn't wish a failed marriage on anyone, James. Even you. He laughed bitterly. Fair. Victoria's leaving me for someone from her firm. Someone with better connections. Better family. More money. Sounds familiar. Yeah. He looked at me seriously. I deserved that. I deserved all of this. What do you want, James? I wanted to see you. To see what you've become. Everyone talks about Sarah Mitchell, the brilliant young architect changing the affordable housing game. I had to see if it was really you. It's really me. I didn't think you'd make it, he said quietly. When you left, when you went back to school, I thought you'd fail. I thought you'd come back, apologize, beg me to take you back. I know you did. You proved me wrong. Spectacularly. I proved myself right, I corrected. That's what mattered. Daniel approached us. Sarah, the city council wants to discuss the next phase. He noticed James and paused. Sorry, am I interrupting? No, I said. We were just finishing. James looked between us, recognition dawning. You're together? He's my partner, I said. Professional or personal? Both. Something crumpled in James's expression. Of course. The successful architect ends up with the successful developer. Perfect match. That's not why we're together, I said firmly. We're together because we respect each other. Because we support each other's dreams instead of competing with them. Because we're both whole people who choose to build something together. Not two broken pieces trying to make a whole. James stared at me for a long moment. I really did lose everything, didn't I? No, I said. You lost me. That's not everything. It's just one person who wasn't right for you anyway. But you became everything. I became myself. That's different. Daniel touched my arm gently. We should get back to the reception. Yeah. I looked at James one last time. I hope you figure out what you actually want, James. And I hope you find someone who wants the same thing. But that person isn't me. It never was. I walked back to the reception with Daniel, leaving James standing alone in the fading sunlight, staring at the building I'd designed, the life I'd built without him. That night Daniel proposed. I know marriage scares you, he said, kneeling in my apartment with a simple ring. I know you've been hurt, but I'm not asking you to give up anything for me. I'm asking to build a life with you where we both keep growing, keep creating, keep being exactly who we are. I looked at him, kind, brilliant, supportive. Nothing like James. Nothing like the man who'd made me feel small. Yes, I said. But I'm keeping my name. He laughed. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. 3 months later, Rachel was my maid of honor at a small ceremony attended by people who actually knew me, who valued me, who celebrated me becoming more myself instead of less. Dr. Santos was there. Marcus Jensen. Daniel's family who welcomed me warmly. My colleagues who'd watched me grow from terrified intern to confident architect. No one from my past life attended. My parents had passed away years before. James's family certainly wasn't invited. It was just the people who loved the person I'd become. You look happy, Rachel whispered as I waited to walk down the aisle. I am happy. No doubts. None. Then let's go get you married. For real this time. The ceremony was simple, honest, joyful. Daniel and I wrote our own vows. I promise to support your dreams, I said. Not because I think they're more important than mine, but because I know you'll support mine too. I promise to be a whole person, not a half looking for completion. I promise to build a life with you, not for you. I promise to see you, Daniel replied. Not an idea of you, but the real, complex, brilliant you. I promise to challenge you when you need it and catch you when you fall. I promise to never ask you to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. We meant every word. 5 years after walking away from James, I stood in my office overlooking the city, reviewing plans for our latest project, a sustainable housing development that would house 500 families. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello, Sarah? It's James. I hadn't heard his voice in 2 years. Hi, James. How did you get this number? I called your office. Your assistant gave it to me. I hope that's okay. What do you need? I wanted to tell you something. I'm moving. Leaving the city. Starting over somewhere new. Okay. Good luck with that. I also wanted to say thank you. For what? For leaving me. For not settling. For showing me what I was too blind to see. I was quiet for a moment. James, I didn't do that for you. I know. But it helped me anyway. Losing you, watching you succeed without me, it forced me to look at myself. At who I was. At what I valued. And I didn't like what I saw. So I'm changing it. Better late than never, right? Right. You were right, you know. When you said I never knew who you were. I never asked. I never cared. I just wanted someone to support my dreams while I chased them. I'm glad you figured that out. Me too. Too late for us, but not too late for me to be better. He paused. Are you happy? Yes. Extremely. Good. You deserve it. Another pause. Goodbye, Sarah. Goodbye, James. I hung up and stared out at the city I was helping to reshape, one building at a time. Daniel appeared in my doorway. Everything okay? Yeah, just closing a chapter. James, how did you know? You have a specific expression when you're dealing with your past. He came to stand beside me. Want to talk about it? Not really. Want to talk about the Henderson project instead? Always. We spent the next hour discussing designs, materials, timelines. Partnership in every sense of the word. That evening as we drove home, Daniel asked, "Do you ever regret it? Leaving him, starting over, taking the hard path." I thought about my two lives, the one where I'd stayed and died broken, and the one where I'd left and built something meaningful. Not even once, I said. Not even when things were hard? When you were broke and working 3 jobs and wondering if you'd made a terrible mistake? Especially not then. Because even at my lowest point in this life I was free. I was myself. I was building toward something instead of dying slowly, while pretending everything was fine. Daniel squeezed my hand. I'm glad you left him. Otherwise I never would have met you. I'm glad I left him too. But not because of you. No. Because I needed to learn I could be happy alone before I could be happy with someone. You're amazing, Daniel. But I would have been okay without you. That's why being with you works, because I choose it every day. Not because I need it. That's the healthiest thing I've ever heard. Therapy helps, I said with a laugh. Remind me to send your therapist a thank you card. Don't you dare. 7 years after leaving James, exactly as long as I'd been married to him in my previous life, I received an award for my contributions to sustainable housing design. The ceremony was at the same conference center where I'd given my first presentation, where I'd seen James for the first time after leaving him. This time I was the keynote speaker. My presentation was about second chances, not in romance but in life. About the courage it takes to walk away from security and build something uncertain. About the difference between being someone's support system and being your own person. 7 years ago, I told the audience, I made a decision that everyone said was crazy. I walked away from a marriage that looked perfect on paper. I gave up financial security to go back to school. I chose uncertainty over safety. I pulled up images of the buildings I'd designed, the communities I'd helped create, the lives I'd touched. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you it was easy. It wasn't. I was broke. I was scared. I had no idea if I'd succeed. But I knew one thing for certain. I'd rather fail being myself than succeed being someone else's version of me. The audience applauded. In the front row, Daniel watched me with pride. Rachel sat beside him, tears streaming down her face. After my speech, dozens of people approached me with questions, opportunities, congratulations. I felt surrounded by abundance, not of money or status, but of genuine connection and meaningful work. I didn't see James in the crowd. I didn't look for him. That chapter was closed. That evening, Daniel and I had dinner at an expensive restaurant, the kind I could never have afforded in my previous life, the kind James used to take his clients to while I ate ramen at home. I'm proud of you, Daniel said, raising his glass. Thank you. Not just for the award. For everything. For being brave enough to choose yourself. It was the best decision I ever made. Even though it was terrifying. Especially because it was terrifying. Easy decisions don't change your life. Daniel smiled. I have something to tell you. Good something or bad something? Good, I think. I've been offered a partnership in a firm in Tokyo. They want to develop sustainable housing across Japan. It's a 5-year commitment, possibly longer. My heart sank. Tokyo. I told them no. Why? Because my life is here. With you. Our firm, our projects, our home. Daniel, you can't turn down an opportunity like that because of me. I'm not turning it down because of you. I'm turning it down because I'm happy here. But, he paused. What if I didn't turn it down? What if we both went? I stared at him. To Tokyo? We could open an international branch of our firm. Focus on sustainable development in Asia. It would be incredible, Sarah. But only if you want it. My mind raced. Tokyo. A new country, a new challenge, a new adventure. In my previous life, I would have immediately said yes, would have dropped everything to follow my husband anywhere he wanted to go. This time was different. Give me 3 days to think about it, I said. Take all the time you need. That night I couldn't sleep. I made a list of pros and cons. I called Rachel. Tokyo, she screamed into the phone. That's amazing. It's terrifying. Same thing. Are you going to do it? I don't know. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm following a man again instead of following myself? Sarah, are you going for Daniel or are you going for the opportunity? I thought about that. Both. Then it's not the same as James. You're not sacrificing your dreams for his. You're both pursuing something together. But what about our work here? The projects we've started. Can they continue without you? Yes. We have great associates. Then what are you really afraid of? I was quiet for a long moment. I'm afraid of losing myself again. Of disappearing into someone else's life. Sarah, you're not the same woman who married James. You're not going to disappear. But maybe you need to prove that to yourself by taking this risk. After we hung up, I sat in my office and thought about the woman I'd been 7 years ago. Desperate for approval, willing to sacrifice everything, terrified of being alone. That woman was gone. I was whole now. Complete. Successful on my own terms. And maybe that meant I was finally ready to build something with someone else without losing myself in the process. I called Daniel the next morning. I want to do it. But with conditions. Name them. We maintain our firm here. We hire someone to run it while we're gone. And if at any point I feel like I'm losing myself in this, we talk about it immediately. Done. Anything else? Yeah. I want us to take separate trips there first. You go for 2 weeks, scout the opportunity. I'll go for 2 weeks, see if I can actually live there. Then we decide together. Daniel smiled. You're brilliant, you know that? I'm careful. There's a difference. We each spent 2 weeks in Tokyo. Daniel met with potential partners and investors. I explored the city, researched housing needs, visited architectural sites. Tokyo was overwhelming, beautiful, challenging. I could see myself there. But more importantly, I could see my work there. Sustainable housing that could help a city struggling with space and environmental concerns. When we both returned, we sat down and made the decision together. I want to go, I said. So do I. Then let's go. We spent the next 6 months preparing. We hired an excellent architect to manage our stateside projects. We found an apartment in Tokyo. We started learning Japanese. Rachel threw us a going-away party. I can't believe you're leaving me, she said, hugging me tight. You could come visit. Frequently. Oh, I will. Someone has to make sure you're not working yourself to death. That's Daniel's job. Please. You both work too hard. I'll have to parent both of you. At the party, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. Sarah? It's Victoria. Victoria-chan. I froze. How did you get this number? I called your old office. They forwarded me. She paused. I need to talk to you. It's about James. I don't. Please. Just 5 minutes. It's important. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside to the balcony. What's this about, Victoria? James is in the hospital. He had a heart attack 2 days ago. He's asking for you. My stomach dropped. Is he okay? He'll live. But he wants to see you. To apologize properly, he said. To say goodbye before you leave for Tokyo. How do you know about Tokyo? Everyone knows, Sarah. You're famous now. The architect who's changing the world. There was no bitterness in her voice, just exhaustion. Will you come? Why do you care? Because he won't stop asking. And because... She sighed. Because you were right. About everything. He never loved me. Not really. I was just the woman who wasn't you. Victoria. Just come. Please. Let him say what he needs to say. Then you can leave and never think about him again. I hung up and stood on the balcony for a long time. Daniel found me there. Everything okay? James had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. He wants to see me. Do you want to go? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. Part of me thinks it's just reopening old wounds. What does your gut say? I thought about that. My gut says go. Not for him but for me. So I can close that chapter completely. Then go. I'll come with you if you want. No. This is something I need to do alone. The next day I went to the hospital. Victoria met me in the lobby. Thank you for coming, she said. How is he? stable, scared, realizing he's not invincible. She led me to his room. I'll wait out here. I pushed open the door. James was lying in the hospital bed, looking smaller and older than I remembered. Wires and monitors surrounded him. Sarah, he said, his voice weak. You came. Victoria said you wanted to see me. I did. I need to tell you something before you leave the country. I sat in the chair by his bed. I'm listening. I've spent the last 7 years angry at you. Angry that you left, angry that you succeeded, angry that you proved everyone wrong. My mother especially. She was furious that you became something without us. I didn't do it to spite you, James. I know. That's what made it worse. You weren't trying to hurt me. You were just trying to live. He coughed, wincing. The heart attack scared me. Lying there, thinking I might die, I realized I've wasted 7 years on bitterness. 7 years that could have been spent building something real. So build something now. You're not dead. I know. But I need to make peace with my past first. He looked at me directly. I'm sorry, Sarah. For using you. For never seeing you. For making you feel like you weren't enough when the truth was I wasn't enough for you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not for him, but for the woman I'd been. The woman who'd believed she wasn't worthy. I forgive you, I said quietly. Just like that. Not just like that. Took me 7 years to get here. 7 years of building a life that had nothing to do with you. 7 years of proving to myself that I was enough exactly as I am. I leaned forward. I forgive you, James. But not because you deserve it. Because I deserve to let go of this anger and move forward completely. Are you happy? He asked. Really happy? Yes. Extremely. Good. He smiled weakly. That's all I wanted to know. That walking away from me gave you the life you wanted. It did. But not because you were terrible. Because we were wrong for each other. You needed someone who wanted to be in your shadow. I needed to cast my own light. I'm glad you found it. I stood up. I should go. Sarah? One more thing. Yes. Thank you. For leaving me. If you'd stayed, we both would have been miserable. You did us both a favor. I know. As I walked out of his room, I felt something release in my chest. The last piece of anger. The last thread of connection to that old life. Victoria was waiting in the hall. Did you get what you needed? She asked. Yeah. I did. I paused. Are you going to be okay? Eventually. We're divorced now. I'm starting over. Good luck with that. Starting over is hard but worth it. Any advice? I thought about the last 7 years, the struggle, the growth, the triumph. Figure out who you are when no one's watching. Build that person first. Everything else will follow. Victoria nodded. Thank you, Sarah. You're welcome. I left the hospital and never looked back. 2 weeks later, Daniel and I moved to Tokyo. The city was chaos and beauty, overwhelming and inspiring. We threw ourselves into work, building connections, developing projects. Our first Tokyo project was a sustainable housing community designed for elderly residents, combining traditional Japanese design with modern accessibility features. It won international awards. Rachel visited twice that first year, bringing stories from home and reminding me to take breaks. You're still working too hard, she scolded during her second visit. I'm building something meaningful. You're allowed to rest too. I rest. When? I thought about it. Sundays. Sarah Mitchell, you are impossible. But she was smiling. 3 years into our Tokyo adventure, I received an unexpected email. It was from Mrs. Chun, James's mother, the woman who'd told me I wasn't good enough on my wedding day. Dear Sarah, it read. I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to apologize for my treatment of you during your marriage to my son. I was wrong. You were never the problem. My son was. I raised him to believe the world owed him everything, and he paid the price for that arrogance. You meanwhile have proven that true success comes from hard work and integrity. I'm sorry I didn't see that sooner. I wish you all the best. Margaret Chun. I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to refuse the apology. But I'd learned something in 7 years. Holding on to anger only hurt me. I wrote back. Thank you for your email. I accept your apology. I hope you and James both find peace. Then I deleted the email thread and moved on. 5 years after leaving James, our Tokyo firm was thriving. We designed sustainable housing across Japan, had expanded to Korea, and were being approached by developers in Singapore and Hong Kong. I was 32 years old and at the top of my field. One evening, Daniel and I were having dinner at a small restaurant near our apartment when his phone rang. "It's the Beijing office," he said. "I should take this." While he stepped outside, I sat alone and thought about the life I'd built. 2 lives, actually, the one where I'd stayed and died and the one where I'd left and thrived. The difference was stark. In my first life, I'd measured my worth by James's approval. I'd shrunk myself to fit his expectations. I died believing I wasn't enough. In this life, I'd built my worth from the ground up. I'd grown into the fullness of who I was meant to be. I was thriving because I'd chosen myself. Daniel came back in, his face serious. "Everything okay?" I asked. "They want us to open an office in Beijing. Full expansion into China. That's amazing. It means another move. More chaos. More starting over." I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Let's do it." "Are you sure?" "Daniel, 7 years ago I was terrified of change. Terrified of uncertainty. Terrified of choosing myself. Now," I smiled. "Now I know that I'm okay no matter what happens. I'm whole on my own. Which means I can take risks, embrace adventure, build something incredible without fear of losing myself. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm just finally the person I was always meant to be." We moved to Beijing 6 months later. The city was massive, ancient, constantly evolving, exactly like me. Our firm continued to grow. We hired talented local architects, collaborated with Chinese developers, created housing that respected tradition while embracing innovation. I was featured in international architecture magazines. I gave TED Talks about sustainable design. I mentored young architects who reminded me of myself, hungry, determined, full of dreams. And through it all, I never forgot the woman I'd been. The woman who'd almost settled for a life that would have killed her soul. 7 years after leaving James, exactly as long as our marriage would have lasted, I was giving a lecture at a university in New York when I saw him in the audience. He looked different. Older, yes, but also somehow lighter. Less burdened. After my lecture, he approached me. "Hello, Sarah." "James, what are you doing here?" "I'm teaching now. Business ethics at NYU. Ironic, I know." I smiled despite myself. "A little. Your lecture was brilliant. The way you talk about creating spaces that honor human dignity. It's beautiful." "Thank you. I wanted to tell you something. I'm getting remarried." "Congratulations." "Her name is Patricia. She's a high school teacher. She has no interest in my career or my family's money. She just wants someone who sees her and values her. She sounds wonderful." "She is. And I'm trying to be the man she deserves. It's hard unlearning all the toxic things I was taught. But I'm trying." "I'm glad." James hesitated. I also wanted to say, "Thank you. For being brave enough to leave. For showing me what I needed to learn. If you'd stayed, I never would have faced who I really was." "You don't need to thank me, James. I didn't leave for you." "I know. But I'm grateful anyway." We stood there for a moment, 2 people who'd once been married, now complete strangers with completely different lives. "I should go," James said. "Patricia's waiting." "But Sarah, I'm proud of you. For everything you've become." "Thank you. I'm proud of me too." He walked away, and I watched him go without sadness or anger or regret. That chapter was truly closed. That evening I FaceTimed Rachel from my hotel room. "I saw James today," I told her. And nothing. He's getting remarried. He's teaching. He's trying to be better. How do you feel about that?" "Nothing. Genuinely nothing. He's just someone I used to know." That's growth, baby. That's freedom. 10 years after leaving James, Daniel and I returned to the U.S. We'd spent 5 years building an international firm with offices in 3 countries. We designed housing that changed lives across Asia. But I was tired. Not of the work, but of the constant travel, the endless new beginnings. "I want to go home," I told Daniel. "Where's home?" "Wherever we decide it is." We settled in San Francisco, bought a beautiful house with a view of the bay, and opened a small, Selective firm focused on projects we cared about rather than projects that paid the most. I was 35, successful beyond my wildest dreams, and finally ready to slow down. Rachel moved to San Francisco 6 months later. I couldn't let you have all the fun, she said. What about Tom? He's coming too. We're both ready for an adventure. Having my best friend nearby felt like coming full circle. She'd been there when I'd left James, when I'd started over, when I'd built my new life. Now she was here as I finally allowed myself to simply enjoy what I'd built. One afternoon, Rachel and I were having lunch when she asked, "Do you ever think about how different your life could have been?" "All the time." "Do you ever regret it?" "Leaving him." "Never. Not once. Not even on the hardest days." I looked at her seriously. Ratch, in my darkest moments after leaving James, when I was broke and exhausted and questioning everything, I was still happier than I ever was married to him. Why? Because I was free. I was myself. I was building toward something instead of slowly dying, while pretending everything was fine. That's dark. That's truth. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You saved yourself, you know, by walking away. I know. Best decision I ever made. 15 years after leaving James, I received an invitation to speak at my old university, the one where I'd finished my architecture degree, where Dr. Santos had believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Dr. Santos was retiring, and they wanted me to give the keynote speech at her retirement ceremony. I accepted immediately. The day of the ceremony, I stood in the same auditorium where I'd attended lectures as a struggling student, where I'd presented my competition-winning design, where I'd learned to be an architect. Dr. Santos sat in the front row, gray-haired and smiling. I began my speech. 15 years ago, I walked into Dr. Santos's office and told her I wanted to be an architect. I was 23, had just left a marriage that would have destroyed me, and had no idea if I could actually succeed. Dr. Santos looked at me and said, "Then let's get to work." I smiled at her. She didn't ask why I'd left my marriage. She didn't question whether I was serious. She didn't tell me it would be too hard. She just believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I pulled up images of the buildings I designed, hundreds of them now across 3 continents. These buildings exist because 15 years ago, a teacher believed in a student. Because she saw potential where others saw a failure. Because she understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is start over. I looked out at the audience, students, faculty, alumni. I'm not here to tell you that leaving my marriage was easy. It wasn't. I was broke. I was scared. I had no idea if I'd succeed. But I knew one thing for certain. I'd rather fail being myself than succeed being someone else's shadow. I pulled up one final image. A photo of me at 23, standing outside the university on my first day back, looking terrified and determined. This is who I was 15 years ago. Broken, uncertain, but ready to fight for herself. If you're that person right now, if you're standing at a crossroads wondering if you have the courage to choose the hard path, I want you to know that you do. I want you to know that 15 years from now, you'll look back on this moment and be grateful you were brave. The audience stood and applauded. Dr. Santos was crying. After the ceremony, she hugged me tight. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You made this possible." "No, Sarah. You made this possible. I just gave you the tools. You did the work." That evening, I had dinner with Daniel at our favorite restaurant overlooking the bay. "Happy?" he asked. "Extremely." "Any regrets?" "About leaving James?" "Not one." "About anything else?" I thought about it. I regret the years I wasted being afraid. The time I spent trying to be someone I wasn't. But I don't regret the journey. Every hard moment made me who I am. And who are you? Sarah Mitchell. Architect. Partner. Friend. Whole person who chose herself and built something beautiful. Daniel raised his glass. To Sarah Mitchell. The most remarkable person I know. To starting over, I replied. To second chances. To being brave enough to walk away. We clinked glasses and I felt a peace I'd never experienced in my first life. The peace of being exactly where I was supposed to be, with exactly who I was supposed to be with, living exactly the life I was meant to live. 20 years after leaving James, I was 45 years old and recognized as one of the leading architects in sustainable housing design. I designed communities across 5 continents. I'd mentored dozens of young architects. I'd changed the way people thought about affordable housing. But more importantly, I was happy. I woke up every morning grateful for the decision I'd made at 22. Grateful for the courage to walk away. Grateful for the determination to build something better. Daniel and I were hosting a dinner party when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello. Is this Sarah Mitchell? A woman's voice unfamiliar. Yes. My name is Grace. I'm James Chen's daughter. I felt my heart skip. James has a daughter? He remarried 10 years ago. My mom is Patricia. They had me 7 years ago. I'm calling because, well, my dad told me about you. About how you left him and built an amazing life. And I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for what? For showing him what real strength looks like. He tells me all the time that I should never shrink myself for anyone. That I should chase my dreams no matter what anyone says. He says he learned that from you. I felt tears prick my eyes. Your dad learned to be better? He's a great dad. He's not perfect, but he tries really hard. And he says it's because you taught him that people can change if they're willing to do the work. I'm glad he became the person you deserve, Grace. Me too. I just wanted you to know that you didn't just change your life. You changed ours too. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a moment. Daniel found me on the balcony. Who was that? James's daughter. She called to thank me for leaving her father. That's unexpected. That's life. Messy and surprising and beautiful. Any regrets? I thought about my 2 lives, the one where I'd stayed and died, and the one where I'd left and thrived. I thought about the woman I'd been and the woman I'd become. I thought about the buildings I'd designed, the lives I'd touched, the difference I'd made. Not one single regret, I said. Not even the hard parts? Especially not the hard parts. They made me strong enough to stand here today. Daniel pulled me close. I love you, Sarah Mitchell. I love you too. Because you're remarkable. Because I chose myself first, I corrected. And that made me whole enough to love you properly. Fair point. We stood there watching the sun set over the bay. 2 whole people who'd chosen to build something together without losing themselves in the process. And I thought about the woman I'd been 20 years ago. Terrified, crying in her wedding dress. Convinced she was making the biggest mistake of her life by leaving. She'd been right about one thing. It had been a life-changing decision. She'd just been wrong about which direction the change would go. Leaving James Chen was the best decision I ever made. Not because he was terrible, though he had been, in many ways, but because staying would have meant losing myself completely. And I was too valuable to lose. 25 years after leaving James, I retired from active practice. I was 50, wealthy, successful, and ready to give back. I started a foundation providing scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds who wanted to study architecture. I named it after Dr. Santos. At the foundation launch, I gave one final speech. 25 years ago, I made a decision that everyone said was crazy. I walked away from marriage, from security, from what was expected of me. And people told me I'd regret it. They told me I'd end up alone, broke, bitter. I smiled at the crowd. They were wrong. I ended up here with a career I love, a partner who respects me, work that matters, and the absolute certainty that I made the right choice. I looked out at the scholarship recipients, young, determined, full of dreams. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. You are enough. Exactly as you are. You don't need to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. You don't need to sacrifice your dreams to support someone else's. You don't need to be someone you're not to be worthy of love. And if you're ever standing at a crossroads, wondering if you have the courage to choose yourself, remember this. The scariest path is usually the right one. The uncertain road leads to the most beautiful destinations. And sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from what's killing you, even if it looks good on paper. Choose yourself. Build your dreams. Be brave enough to start over when something isn't working. Because in 25 years, you'll look back on this moment and be grateful you had the courage to choose yourself. The audience stood and applauded. Rachel was crying. Daniel was beaming. And I felt complete. Not because I'd achieved everything I'd set out to achieve, but because I'd become the person I was always meant to be. That night I received one final message. It was from James. Sarah, I heard about your foundation launch. Congratulations on everything you've built. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of who you became. And I'm grateful that you were brave enough to leave me, because it forced me to become someone better. Thank you for being the catalyst for change in my life. I hope you're as happy as you deserve to be. James. I read the message once, smiled, and deleted it. I didn't need his gratitude or his approval. I had something better, my own. I'd spent one life dying for someone else's approval. I'd spent this life living for my own. And that made all the difference. The end.